Welcome to 30 Minute Reviews. I am Adam. I'm going to apologize for the very loud vents. It is 90 degrees out, and I'm still doing this out of my car for right now, so the best way to do it is to use my Bluetooth, microphone built into the stereo system, or whatever the hell that thing is. But either way, here we are with this week's episode. Let's start out with, I should have written down an itinerary for today. Start out with Shadowfall, the new Star Wars book. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know that I'm very much into Star Wars. Back in the day, before Disney acquired it, I was very deeply seeped in the expanded universe, and I started getting back into it, rereading some of the stuff I previously read, like Thrawn. I read Inspector of the Past recently. I was halfway through Visions of the Future when I started reading some other things. Now I'm going back to what I was reading before, and then Shadowfall came out. I really liked some of the best Star Wars that we've had is about what when you watch Star Wars as a movie. When you watch Star Wars as a movie, it's not a war movie. It's an adventure movie at its core. It's science fantasy. It's not science fiction. It's very soft science fiction, where a cosmic war is the backdrop for a larger adventure. In the same way that you wouldn't say the movie's about the Galactic Civil War, or the war between the First Order and the Resistance, or the order between the war between the Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems. It's all about. There's always a war there as a backdrop, but what it is at its core is it's the story of a family and how that family's decisions impact everyone else. So when you watch the movies, if you ignore the entire expanded universe, it's the story of the Skywalkers. And I saw someone say that if you look at it, break it down what it is, it's the fall of Anakin, the redemption of Anakin, and then the legacy of Anakin is what the saga is about. When you get off that beaten path, though, you get these stories about the war, because that's what the backdrop is, and that's where if you go off of that and you fall a little bit back, you end up in that. That's why you get Rogue One, which is a war story about them stealing the Death Star plans. You get Solo, which is about I've seen Solo once. I'm gonna have to watch Solo again. It's about how the gritty underworld. That, oddly enough, the farther away you get from the Force, a lot of times the more interesting the stories get, because you're taking very human characters, even if they're alien, and you're putting them in this tremendous situation, and it's a very interesting story. And that's what we have with Alphabet Squadron. Alphabet Squadron kind of feels like X-Wing from the 90s, about Wedge Antilles and Rogue Squadron, where the story is all about going off where Alphabet Squadron ended. We have a story. It's Yarka Quill and all of the Will Lark and Chester Chaddock and all these other characters who have been brought together through strange circumstances, and they've now formed Alphabet Squadron, which is a squadron of starfighters of each different letter wing, the A wing, the X wing, the Y wing, the U wing, and the B wing, and it because of that, all of these characters don't really they don't mesh together properly, because they're kind of like a ragtag team that was brought together in through circumstance. They happened upon they happened upon each other. It's a great quote. The quote from the novelization of Star Wars, one of the first novelizations, at the end of the beginning. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Naturally, they became heroes. That's really probably one of my favorite quotes from Star Wars, aside from one of the movies. And that sums up what this is. And this, like the stronger entries of the movies, like Empire Strikes Back, like The Last Jedi, it takes the characters takes a story that's kind of not self-contained. Well, self-contained is the right word, but what I'm saying is like it's not a particularly long-ranging story. Like if you look at The Last Jedi, it's a very like the span of time it takes place over is very short. It's almost real time. There's no time jump forward, time jump back. Like if you look at like Return of the Jedi, where it's like they go there, then it's like God knows how much time between it, and then they go to the Rebel base, and they go to and then they go from there to Endor, and there's time lapsing between it. This is a very short period of time, but that period of time is used to explore the characters and take the characters apart and really make you feel like you're getting to know the characters more intimately. Which is the best way to really talk about a second entry in a trilogy, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be a trilogy of books. So when we take apart these characters, we learn more about who they are and all of that. And I don't want to go too deep into it because the book came out Tuesday. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it yet. But really, that's what this is. This is another one of those good, deep character studies that you get, and where it's not a deconstruction of the character, but it's establishing the depth to them, that they're not just starfighter pilots who are doing their part, and it establishes depth to them beyond what initially brought them to form Alphabet Squadron in the previous book. It's a fantastic book. If you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out. You can get it wherever you buy your books. I bought mine at Barnes & Noble. Audible has it. You can buy it on Amazon. You can get it wherever you get your books. I did not see it at Target though. I did look. I did not see it at Target. So our second topic for today, after Shadowfall, was... I feel like there was something else I wanted to address. This Pokemon Direct. That's what it was. Okay, so let me sum up the last 2 weeks for you in terms of Pokemon news. Last week, there was a big announcement. We're going to have this big Pokemon Present, which is kind of like a Direct, but strictly for Pokemon. And people got hyped up, because that's really cool. It's like, oh, cool, they're going to announce some cool new games. And then they do it, and they announce that in Go, there's going to be, they're adding in the, They're adding in the, Mega Evolutions to Go at some point in the near future. Generation 6 is going to be coming to Go. Go Fest is coming up. We knew that already. They announced a new Pokemon Snap game and a new mobile game. Bunch of really cool stuff gets announced. And then they say, we have another big announcement coming next week. So naturally what happens is, and a lot of people on Twitter, I saw this, a lot of people were like, well, you shouldn't have had this expectation, and not done with the next DLC yet, you shouldn't have had that expectation. I'm not saying I was expecting an announcement that at the end of this year in November we would have another Pokemon game. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, I was expecting more than an announcement of what basically amounts to a Pokemon skinned version of League of Legends. I feel like this is a very strange decision to put this, and then when I found out how much money was being funneled from the company that's making this game into Game Freak, and to Nintendo, to make this announcement the way they did, it kind of makes sense, because money rules everything at the end of the day. Now, here's the thing about this game. I'm hesitant to say I don't want to see Pokemon experiment, because a lot of times when Pokemon has experimented and tried new things, the results have been largely good. Rumble turned out very good. Rumble was an interesting game. I liked Rumble. I liked Rumble Blast. I liked, the Rumble game on my phone that I was playing for a bit until they discontinued that. Thought it was pretty cool. Quest was pretty fun for a little bit, and it just didn't have a great attachment rate. Mystery Dungeon was an experiment. You play as a Pokemon, you do that. And that was fantastic. Ranger was one of the best spin-offs. They had Pokemon Pinball, which they haven't done since Generation 3. Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon XD, both of which were very good. Now, these are all things that would have been interesting to continue these series of. If they remastered Pokemon Ranger in the way they remastered Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, that would be interesting. I would play that game in a heartbeat. If they remastered, like the Pokemon Snap's coming, if they did a new version of Pokemon Trozy, which might be that cafe game that I haven't downloaded yet, but I'm not 100% sure. So I don't want to definitively say one way or the other. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying not to explore new things. But what I'm saying is you should really maybe look to some of the older ones and, bring those back too. Because I think the intersection of people, I don't think there's as much hype for a Pokemon themed game like this, Arena Fighter. I don't think that's going to really work. I think it's going to have a similar attachment rate to Pokemon Quest or Pokemon Rumble Rush, I think was the one on the phone. Where it's like, it's cool for a little bit and then no one really plays it. It's like Magikarp Jump is not a game that you're trying to, get people to play constantly, but I feel like that should be a similar situation. I don't know. And the phrase "free to start" is also disconcerting because, like, when I think free to start, I think of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon for the Switch, which they had a free demo of, but you could only get to a certain point. And when you get up to Mount Steel, you couldn't play anymore, and then when the game came out, you can continue from there. That, when I hear free to start, that's what I think, and I don't think that's a great way to do this. I think free to play is the way to do this, but free to start is going to inherently turn people off. And I think that the other interesting thing going along with this is I don't think it was a smart idea to do this in its own presentation, because all you did was hype up this presentation for a week to the point where people are like, okay, it's gonna be Let's Go Johto, or it's gonna be Gen 4 remakes, or it's gonna be Generation 9, and it's like people getting really hyped up for it, and then it's like, oh, it's another spin-off, and it's like, great. Like, I couldn't bring myself to care when it was announced. It's like, I just want to, like, and there are so many things that are in the works that haven't been talked about since, like, Pokemon Go integration into Home. Still have no word on that yet. Like, when's that coming? I want that to come, so that way I can, get rid of all these fucking Meltan when I haven't used my Switch. There's a lot. And I feel like they could have dove deeper into their well of, previously used topics, and I think if they put out another Ranger game on the Switch, that would be a hit, because it'd be unique. I think if they put out especially if Snap takes off, because I find it hard to believe that they're not going to be doing more in the future, considering this year alone they're doing a new Snap and they've remastered Mystery Dungeon. I think they could remaster Stadium. I think Stadium would sell very well. I think if they remastered, or doing a new Stadium game altogether, but in the same style as the original, but with all the new Pokemon and all that. But even that won't really mesh well, because it's like, what are you going to do? Just use the Pokemon that are in Sword and Shield? There's going to be all the Pokemon if you integrated in with Home. How does that work? What does that look like? Because then we have the issue of, well, and the thing is, too, is there a point to that? Because the novelty of Stadium was playing with your Pokemon on your TV, and if it's on the Switch now, that's your base console. There's no point for a Stadium game, even if it is different. If they integrated in the Stadium aspects into the games, that'd be cool, but they're not going to do that. But it'll be interesting to see where they go with this. I'm hoping for at some point a new Ranger title, but I'm not going to get my hopes up. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about toxicity in fandom. Now, if you are, I've come around on this topic a little bit. Originally, I thought I was with the people who were like, how does toxicity in fandom impact your ability to watch or relate to a piece of media? So, we can talk about Pokemon, we can talk about let's use Star Wars. Here's the thing. For a frame of reference, today on Twitter, I tweeted out, my local representative tweeted out a comment about Flynn's case, and then I made a snide comment back. People, I guess, think that I'm the prosecutor in the case or something, because a bunch of bot accounts came out and started attacking me. And the point of that is it's to keep you from commenting in the future, because it's like, I didn't want my notifications blown up. It's annoying. My phone's constantly vibrating because these assholes keep, commenting on it and thinking that, screaming at me is not going to make me change my mind about the fact that the man pled guilty to... That's not the point. We're not going to get into that here. But either way, that's the general concept. And the same thing happens if you share an opinion that is outside of the general consensus in a fan community, a lot of times. And let's take let's look at Star Wars. The loudest fan community dislikes The Last Jedi. It's not the largest, it's the loudest, the most annoying. And it's, they dislike The Last Jedi. They don't like what they did with Luke's character, they disagree. They want recanonization of legends, they want all of this, nonsense. By mercilessly beating down anyone who you disagree with. And in fandom, you should be able to have a discussion about the merits of character choices and, how it works. And really, that's why a few weeks back when Sam Witwer's comments about The Last Jedi came out, and he made those comments when he was streaming on Twitch, I heard that and I was like, you know what, that's a valid point. He makes valid points about why he thinks Luke Skywalker wouldn't get from point A to point B in that way. He'd get from point A to, a different point B. And I was like, those are valid points. And then, to counter it, it's all about interpretation. And inherently literature and movies and all of that are not objective mediums. There's no objective correct answer. I mean, there are certain things that are objectively good and objectively bad, like framing of shots, grammar, things like that, but that are more technical, that you can say these are objectively good things, and these look objectively good, these sound objectively good, and that. But in terms of character arcs and, things like that, there is no objective good or objective correct, because it's not a work of history. You're not reporting on something that actually happened. You're not watching a documentary. You're not reading a nonfiction book. It's a work of fiction. So ultimately, it comes down to what the author wants the character to do. And some authors believe that, I kind of believe this too, but like sometimes characters kind of take on a life of their own, and once you develop a character, they kind of start doing, you think, well, this is what the character would do next, and then it starts going off in a different way, and, that's a whole thing, but ultimately it comes down to how you interpret the character. And to sit here and say that objectively Luke would not do this is incorrect. So when he said, like, look, I don't think this is what he would do. I don't think Luke is the kind of person who would do this. I think based on what we saw, this isn't how we would do. And then conversely, you have Dave Filoni, who is the head of who's the head of he's a high up in Lucasfilm. He's on The Mandalorian. He's on all this stuff, Clone Wars, Rebels. He's got his bona fides there. But he said, here's what I think about it. And his thought was that I think Luke would do this. I see Luke as the person who lives through this, and then this stays with him. And that's always going to be a latent fear he has. And that's also an equally valid interpretation. And it's like his interpretation of why the Phantom Menace is so important is a very valid interpretation. And here's the thing that people don't understand, is that it's all interpretation. There is no subjective correct answer. And when you say, well, objectively, this is what they should have done. No, you're wrong. That is the only objective wrong here, is when you say that you have objectively the correct answer. You don't. And when you say this, and when you say it in this way loudly online, and you try to get people to side with you and agree with you, and that's what's going to happen, and this is correct. And when you shut people out actively, it takes away one of the key aspects of fandom. And one of the key aspects is discussion. And the networking aspect of making, building relationships with other people who have a similar, thing. Like, I hate to say it, but I've met more reasonable sports fans than I have Star Wars fans. And this is coming from someone who has an irrational hatred of Stony Brook University to this day, because they're a rival of the school he went to for undergrad. I hate the Dallas Cowboys. But you can, I'm not a Mets fan, but you can still recognize what the Mets did in the past. And you can recognize if people say, this guy's let me use a better example. When they did the farewell tour for Mariano Rivera for the Yankees, everywhere he went, he was met with acclaim. Every single stadium he went to, he got a standing ovation. The Red Sox, the Mets, everyone. Because there is a respect for people who, despite the fact that they're, playing against you, and in some cases they beat you, and you didn't win the championship, there's still a respect for them. And not just at home, but everywhere else you go. That doesn't happen in fandom. For, pop culture and, things like that. That doesn't happen. And that's the big change that needs to happen, is it's a respect for conflicting viewpoints. And we also have to acknowledge that it's not a conflicting viewpoint to say that, hey, maybe you shouldn't send death threats to the actress playing this character. Maybe you shouldn't harass them until they're off social media. Because here's the thing. You're not only interfering with the fans' ability to interact with each other when you do that, you're challenging the ability of the actor or actress to interact with the fans and vice versa, which is a huge part of it. It's this interaction that you have with each other that's getting lost now when you partake in this behavior, and the point is, you're trying to silence a dissenting opinion, because you never see people within the same subset of a fan community doing it to each other, but they only do it to other people when they want to keep them out of the fan community. And I think that's where we'll wrap up for today, where it's like sitting here like saying, oh, they started it. Like, I see a lot of this with Paper Mario. I see this with Pokemon, where it's like, this side's toxic, no, this side's toxic. You're both acting like children. The beginning and end of a transaction, when you buy a game, is buying the game. You are then entitled to say you do like the game or you don't like the game, and then from that point on, you either buy the next one or you don't. That's how this works. Okay? And if you don't like the game, you don't buy the next one when they don't do what you want to do. Because that's what you are entitled to as the consumer of the media. You are not entitled to send death threats to the staff, or the social media person, or the actors, or the actresses, or the developers, or anything like that. You're not entitled to attack anyone who disagrees with you and tell them to kill themselves, call them any slur you can think of. That's not what you are allowed to do. You are allowed to disagree. That is fine. You're allowed to have a discussion. You're allowed to debate. You're allowed to think what you want to think. But you cannot make it don't make it personal attacks. Just, I respect your opinion, I disagree. And it would make fan communities a lot more fun. Because right now, like, I posted on Reddit, and I don't know, I just, like, I feel like it's not, I'm going to try and get more active in fan communities, I think, but, I don't know, it's just not fun when that's what you get into. So next week, we will be discussing a movie that you've probably never heard of. It's called 3022. I have not watched it yet, but I picked it up at Walmart. I'll be giving it away after today's episode on Twitter, a digital copy of it in prep for this movie, because, like I said, probably never heard of it. I didn't hear of it until I saw it on the shelf. But we'll be giving that away, and we'll be reviewing that next week. Also, by next week, I should have a bunch of